We need to get used to talking about ethnicity in a dispassionate, reasonable way, but we don't even exist on the multicultural map.
A couple of years ago, a gentleman was arrested and sent to jail for putting stickers up in his neighbourhood that said, "It's okay to be white." What can we do about this? I don't expect solutions, but what can be done? What are the first steps on us challenging this narrative of anti-white hate? What can the individual do, and what do governments need to do?
Well, again, sorry to take over again, Frank. Just to make a point. What we've done, and we've been very successful in this, is we've formed an organization, and this was Frank's genius, actually. Our organization is part of the multicultural community. We've said we're part of the multicultural community. So we have communities for Indian Australians, Aboriginal Australians, Chinese Australians. Where's the community for the Anglo-Australians, the British Australians? There isn't one. So we actually took over and repurposed a different organization which had some heritage and things and some resources. But this has been wildly successful because they haven't been able to attack us, because if they try to attack us, we just say, well, we're part of the multicultural community. We're just doing what everybody else is doing. What's the problem? And then they're completely stuck. So we've had a dream run where we're almost pretty much we're praising the White Australia policy, which normally you would be absolutely excoriated for, and yet we're left alone. We're saying, hey, it was actually a good thing because it was good for our people. And no one can say anything because we're saying, well, we're just looking out for our people while you look out for your people. And we're happy with you to look out for your people, but we want to do the same thing. So I think that's been a really successful strategy. So if anyone in the UK wanted to copy that, I would say that that's not a bad idea. Sorry, Frank, if you want to.
Can I just jump in there with one little thing? History teaches us that when you create a new weapon, eventually your enemies will use that weapon against you. And that's exactly what you've just done.
There's one big barrier. I tell an anecdote. I was teaching at Birkbeck College in 2005 to 6. And I asked a colleague, I said, so tell me what's the ethnic situation here? You've had these bombings. It was just after the railway bombings and terror bombings. And I said, so what's happening with the ethnic situation? What's your assessment of how Britain's heading, how things are going? And his response was, he said, well, I don't think anyone could really call me a racist. I don't think I'm a racist. Am I a racist? No, I don't think I'm a racist. I think I'm really, and his whole focus was worrying about whether or not someone would call him a racist. I said to him, look, hold on a moment. I'm asking you something very different. What's happening to the interests of the British people, of the indigenous British people? Because you're a political scientist, so what's your outlook? What's your assessment of that? And he could not get a grip on what I was saying. This is a highly intelligent person. What I'm getting at now, there's a larger lesson, which is British people are so sweet. They're too sweet. Harry was alluding to this earlier. We need to get used to talking about ethnicity in a dispassionate, reasonable way, starting with the position that everyone has ethnic interests. This term is never used in politics, by the way. You'll never hear Mr. Starmer or a conservative talking about, or actually,
Nigel
Farage talking about what are our ethnic interests, what is the minority ethnic interest, how can we work them together, where is it zero-sum game, where is it not zero-sum game, and so on, which reasonable people would do. But we don't even exist on the multicultural map. We don't even exist. We're not allowed to even put our hand up and say, hello, we're here. Did you notice this? We're called the majority, which created the country over 2,000 years. Can we have a little say? And racist. It's racist. So people have to be a bit forceful about this and start talking in a reasonable way about English interests, Scottish interests, native British interests. And it's difficult because it's an uncomfortable conversation to have. But that's a barrier.
It is. I mean, I can give you a couple of examples from the UK. A couple of years ago, a gentleman was arrested and sent to jail for putting stickers up in his neighborhood that said, "It's okay to be white." And he was arrested and sent to jail for under some race laws. At the height of Black Lives Matter, when footballers were taking the knee to Black Lives Matter in 2020, somebody hired a little prop plane and had a big banner trailing behind it saying white lives matter. He got arrested.
Didn't he say was he say all lives matter, or was it white lives matter? I had the feeling he said all lives matter. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Now you've said that, I'm not sure. It was either white lives matter or all lives matter. He was arrested. His girlfriend lost her job because of what her boyfriend did. And that's how toxic this conversation is in the UK. But the good news is it's changing. That was that. I think in hindsight, and when history is written, I think we all owe Black Lives Matter a big thank you, because they brought all this to the fore. And since then, people have opened their eyes and seen what's been going on with critical race theory, gender ideology, all this lunacy. And more people every year in my country are waking up and seeing it. And then since Trump and since some of the elections in Western Europe, it's speeding up and speeding up. Hence why Reform UK are doing really well in the polls.
If I could say a little bit more on continuing my previous theme, in light of what you just said, Nick, one reason people feel uneasy about talking identity talk, is that it's not really us. Yes, we can be patriotic. We've lost our cultures. We've lost hundreds of thousands of people in war fighting for the countries and so on. So of course we can do that. But ethnic politics, we're just not very ethnocentric. We're so individualistic. It's part of what we are. I feel jealous about our individualism. I think it's a joy, personally. I want to live in it's the psychological basis of liberal democratic government. And that's what I think most of us want to preserve. But we also want our people and our families to survive, if you don't mind. It would be nice to have both, your cake and eat it too. So the way to square that circle, I think, is to outsource one's ethnocentrism. And that brings me to what Harry was just talking about: organize. We have a great ability to organize. People in general have that ability. We need to create organizations which advance our ethnic interests, just as we have organizations to advance soccer, local soccer or football or cricket, or whatever it might be. We need to outsource it and be realistic about who we are and what we're capable of. I just don't think the average Englishman and woman is capable of doing what minorities do. Not all minorities, but many minorities do, which is obsess about their ethnicity, obsess in this collectivist, a conformist way. That's not us. So we have to find a different pathway to an interest which is actually universal. Every family wants to survive and prosper. Every ethnic group wants to survive and prosper with its culture intact and its identity intact. But we have to be a bit clever about it.
I think a good point for people is to have a look, as well as your book, have a look in ours. There's a lot of really good stuff there, and it gives you an academic sort of a background in how to tackle this. And with that, you can be. We find that what we try to do is not to be implicit and skirt around things. We're explicit. We're like, as Frank said, we're explicit, and we say, well, we want to look after our ethnic interests. I mean, not obsessively, but we want, that's a part of what we do. And this is not, like I say, we're not wanting to harm anyone else. We just want to look after our people and be explicit about that. Just, yes, are you a racist? Well, what do you call racist? If you mean, do I care about my people? Yeah, I care about my people. But I don't hate anyone else, you know. And we have some very good definitions in the book, which is from Frank's years of study of what we've laid out what is racism, what is xenophobia, what is ethnocentrism, and split it all up, which is really helpful for people. So yeah.
Yeah. The last chapter of my book is called Thank You, England. It may not end up being that, but at the moment it's called Thank You, England. And my last chapter is going to be about everything the English has done for the world. You know, everything we've given the world. I mean, yeah, it is. I mean, exactly. And I think that's what I want people to come away from reading my book with, as in, we're amazing people, we're amazing islands, and the world owes a big thank you. We've given the world everything. We've given them our language, we've given the world most of the most popular sports, most of the science, the medicines. But lots of countries were given parliamentary systems and English common law and law of, and we I want the English people, but British people and the Anglosphere people to realise that we have nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, we're not perfect. By far, we're not perfect. We've done some terrible things, like everyone does terrible things. But when it comes to Judgment Day and we're judging what we've done, good and bad, compared to everybody else in the world throughout history, you'll find us at the top of the table.
That's the word comparative. Yeah, comparative. It's like people judge us and they put us on this in this dock and say, you've done this and your ancestors did this and they did that. It's like, well, yeah, but let's compare. Who do you think was doing, who was not doing this? You know, like you said, were we involved in the slave trade? For a short time we were, like, relatively speaking. Who wasn't? You know, did we conquer other countries? Yes, we did. Who didn't? You know, so I think that the comparative thing is very important.
Also, I think that lesson, Nick, is especially valuable for our children. Our children. I remember once picking my youngest son up from school. This was in Australia, back in Australia, and I was driving him home. This is from not kindergarten, primary school. He was 8, I think 8 years old, and we're driving back, and he came out with an outburst. Apropos of nothing, he said, "Oh, I wish white people had never come to Australia." Because Australia Day was the next day. We celebrate Captain Cook and the First Fleet and all that in 1788. And I almost drove off the road. I mean, where did this come from? It came from his teacher at school, who'd been propagandizing him and his class with horrific Marxist films full of historical lies, very upsetting. Children can't defend themselves against this. They just accept it as reality, as a tragedy story about genocide and about all this colonization and children being taken from their Aboriginal families. And I complained to the school, received an apology. The teacher was out of line. There was no punishment. Fair enough. But I want my children to be taught just what you were saying, just what you were talking about. And what you said, it was actually rounded. You talked about things that English people have done wrong. It's called being human. We're mortals. But just look at the positives. If you compare the positives, we've got nothing to be ashamed of. And this lack of positive identity formation in schools is a tragedy. It's a real tragedy. And I believe we have the most radical young generations coming up now that there have ever been, because all their indoctrination, and then if they switch to the mass media, it's more indoctrination. If they switch to social media, which sort of mix, it's more chaotic and aggressive than anything. So this is something where activists need to focus their attention on the school system, fight back as best you can. My approach with teachers and headmasters, when I've spoken to headmasters and so on, is, look, I know you're actually bureaucratically confined to propagandize your students against Anglo-Australia. I know you're actually, by law, you're required to have various rituals and so on. And I said, but can't you protect them a bit? Can't you use your informal executive authority to shield the children in your care from this basically Bolshevik pack of lies. And they just stare at me. They've never heard anything like this before, because teachers themselves are indoctrinated. Teachers themselves have been through the belly of the beast. They're all products of the university system. And so they themselves are helpless. So we've got a bit of a struggle to do there.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for this conversation. You've helped me formulate the last few chapters of my book a little bit better. Any closing remarks from either of you?
Like I say, the Islamic thing's a big thing in England now, I think. If any of you readers, if you have a look at my book, The Story of Muhammad, Islam Unveiled, I think that is a fantastic way. It's, I'm talking my own book, but it's sold a massive amount. There's a reason for that. It's designed as a weapon. If you have a problem with Islam, read the book. If everyone read the book tomorrow, we'd have it fixed by the weekend. It's one of those kind of a thing. So I think that's really important for people in the UK, because you have much more of a problem with Islam and Muslim gangs and things like that than we do here. It's much of a lesser of a thing here, for various reasons. But yeah, that's a big thing. But yeah, other than that, no, don't be ashamed of your people, and caring about your people. It's natural. Everybody does it, and we can do it too. Well, we should be allowed to do it.
Yeah, and I would say thanks for hearing. Good to hear about your book, Nick. Obviously, great minds do think alike. I do recommend that people get a hold of our book, and it's a light read. It's only 45,000 words. It's a light read, and it's highly accessible. So I recommend that. And also, I have a look at our videos, and the main thing is to get out and get active on the ethnic front. Start mixing it in, talking to people, reading things.
The British Australian community.com.au is our website. So there's lots of stuff. There's lots of information stuff, articles, YouTube videos. We make lots of videos that are really good. We're very active on X as well. If you look us up on X, it's like Brit_com, like with underscores between them. So
I'll put all those links in the description of the video to make it easy for people. Same with the books as well. I'll put those links there so people can access them really easily.